If you buy the Constitution in Exile, you will learn why and how you and I have lost liberty. You'll learn why the government thinks it can take your rights away from you. You'll learn why the federal government thinks it can tell the states what to do. You'll learn why the sovereignty of the states has been obliterated by the federal government, and you'll learn why the federal government recognizes no limitation on its power, doesn't recognize the Constitution as a constraint, and thinks it can get away with anything it wants. If you want to know why and how the federal government got so big and so fat and can regulate and tax anything in existence, read this book and you'll learn why. Well, I was a judge of the Superior Court of New Jersey for 8 years, and when I went on the bench, I was your typical right-wing Republican law and order conservative. And after trying criminal cases for a couple of years, I began to observe the things that the government does in an effort to convict people, how the government's employees, when they take an oath to uphold the Constitution, never really mean it, and how lawyers who came into my courtroom spent most of their time evading and avoiding the Constitution. This book is the product of my observations of all the bad things that government has done to get around the Constitution, so that it cannot produce justice but victory for its lawyers in the courtroom. A couple things can be done to bring the federal government within its confines and return the Constitution to the way it was originally intended. And I point out a few of these in the concluding chapter of the book. First, United States senators should not be elected popularly. They should be elected by state legislatures, as they were for the first 150 years of our country. This prevents them from grandstanding to national audiences and truly makes them representatives of the states in the federal government. This also enhances the sovereignty of the states. This creates individuality amongst the states and competition between them. Ronald Reagan used to say one of the beauties of our system is you can vote with your feet, meaning if you don't like the laws in New York, you can walk to New Jersey where you might find the laws more to your liking. Having senators elected by state legislatures would further enhance the independence of the states. I would also abolish the amendment that allows federal income taxes. Allowing the government this limitless disposal of cash to spend as it wants has been one of the greatest evils of our time, because the government is toothless if it can't spend your money. Give it an unending stream of money and it'll regulate you into oblivion. Boy, my passion for the Bill of Rights comes from the fact that I like my freedom like everybody else. I happen to be privileged to have a job where I watch these things every day and I see the erosions all the time. One of the reasons we fought the Revolutionary War was because the colonists detested the ideas that British soldiers could write their own search warrants. They didn't have to go to a judge. They could come to your front door and handwrite a search warrant and hand it to you. You had to let them in. I mean, we fought a revolution over this. We won the revolution. We wrote a constitution, and we prohibited the government from writing its own search warrants. Well, guess what the Congress and the President have given us in the Patriot Act? Self-written search warrants. If the FBI shows up at your post office or your computer server or your telephone company or your lawyer's office or your bank and handwrites a search warrant, the recipient of the search warrant must comply with it, and they can't even tell you about it. That is un-American. That violates the Fourth Amendment. That should arouse anybody's passion. It is the role of everyone who has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution to protect its original values. That means not just the courts, but the President and the members of Congress as well. But because the federal government, because the Congress and the President recognize no limitation on their power, because they have twisted and tortured the ordinary and plain meaning of words in the Constitution so as to give themselves more power, it has fallen on members of the judiciary to restrain them. So it shouldn't be this way, but it is only life-tenured black-robed judges on whom we can rely to enforce our rights, to restrain the government, to restrain the President and the Congress, and to keep them within the original meaning of the Constitution, because they'll never do it on their own. I think that readers will take away from the Constitution in Exile a surprise that most members of Congress who have written laws that have given themselves more power have not read the Constitution, have not taken seriously the oath that they've taken to uphold the Constitution and believe that the federal government can do whatever it wants. Remember, the states formed the federal government. The states gave away a little bit of each of their power to form a central government of specific, delegated, enumerated, limited powers. But today, the Congress and the president behave as if they're the only legislature in the land, and as if they can right any wrong and correct any evil, from the water pressure in your shower to the amount of alcohol in your bloodstream when you drive to the drugs-enhancing drugs that athletes can take. The government legislates in any way it wants. I think most Americans would be surprised to realize that, and that's one of the lessons of this book.